So I just wanted to let you know I did another candle in a jar just out of the leftover little candles that used to go into glass votives. Back in the 90s, we had that more than we had glass jars. And I use this in a different craft, so I just put it on this so you'll see that in the background. Before I get into gang stalking, I want to talk a little bit more about things that we had in the 90s. So a lot of what I'm trying to do is talk about how things are today versus how they were when I was growing up and I was younger. When I was growing up and I was younger, as you guys know, this technology didn't exist. Part of why I think they had to try to convince me is that they need to convince you of things in order for you to trust them. So that at some point you say, well, if they convince me of this and this seemed right, then I'll start to trust them. Don't do it. I've told you guys in a previous video that I started looking up information that they were talking about just to test them, and they fail all the time. So what they thought I was going to do is then in every video talk about these things. No, because that would look like, and this is what they said, they thought my personality was to have to like, say like, haha, you guys didn't know what you're talking about. No, I think when I was growing up compared to now, we had different ways. The older generation had different ways of expressing things. That when you're around these types of people who want to tell you things that aren't true, and then you start to have to get to a point where they're doing this. That was how they wanted this to be. So I can't remember the phrase we would use, or they would tell us, but it was sort of like there will be people out there who will try to convince you of things that aren't true. And part of what they're trying to do isn't just to convince you of it, to get you to trust them over yourself. So if you couldn't, like back in the day, we didn't have the internet to just search things, like do an internet search. We would have to really either find someone else who knew, or look it up, go someplace, look it up in a book or something. So part of why this is easier than it would have been years ago is because you can look it up. But the other part of that tells me that it's not meant to, it was really meant to keep you with them to gain your trust. So I'll just say it was, I can't remember how they would have phrased it back then, but it's about gaining your trust. And this is why I have the whole list of winning confidence scams. How do they win your confidence? And again, there are so many good movies out there that talk about scammers and winning your confidence, how they gain your trust. Partly how they gain your trust is seeming like they know more than and think of any authority in your life. Like, I don't want to name the examples because we're going to see some of that in the news. I think that's just my prediction of this. But those people tend to gain trust easily because they can hide behind that authority. Regular people, and that's something I want to tell you. They're really upset. They're really upset about a lot of things. They were banging today. They were trying to get me to go outside the door and film and take people's images just to keep this level of frustration going with me. So part of that is that I said in a previous video, I've proven a lot, so I don't have to, I don't have to keep proving those same things over and over again. You could just look at a thumbnail, you could just look at a video, you could look at the news, it's there. So they were upset because they said that would mean that people should just trust me. That isn't what I said. I'm talking about things that I was able to prove and not having to reprove it. But part of that goes back to this idea of authority. So if I am able to tell you guys with authority, this is what happened, here's the proof already. Don't you guys think that that means I wouldn't have to say it in every video over and over and over again? Because then I would be the very thing that they wanted me to be, someone who seemed like I was bragging, or someone who seemed like, oh, look at me. No, it's part of how their scam works. So their scam works by always seeming like an authority person over other people. So look at me, I've achieved this, so if you want to achieve it like me, you do this. And that becomes what they hide behind. What I'm saying is, I can prove this once. I don't you can trust me that if I'm saying I worked at these high-end stores and you already know it, I don't have to keep saying it. I don't have to keep proving it. And you can trust that I know what I'm talking about because I'm speaking with that experience. Does that make me an authority? No, I'm not an authority. So they said, "Oh, we thought you were going to recommend give medical advice." I'm not a doctor. And that's another big issue, meaning they felt I would move from trust to authority, which is what they do. That's a common trick with a predator. They go from, and they just say, "Oh, yeah," they go from trust to authority right away. And I'm going to tell you from past experience with these types of people, they've done that before to me, where just because you say, "Oh, I trust you've worked in this field or you have experience in this," all of a sudden they become an authority. That's a big difference. Someone who has experience in something say, "Well, I know this because I've experienced this, blah, 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 blah." To say I'm an authority, I'm not an authority. So they keep mistaking that because that's what predators do. So the predator takes the experience and turns them into an authority. So they said, the word expert. Expert and authority are two different things. I can't with these folks. Expert and authority are two different things. You can be an expert in something, but not an authority. And that's my point. I feel like they're very manipulative. And I used to do a whole thing about, manipulative, how they're manipulative and how they can quickly switch from being expert to an authority. An expert could be someone who's worked in a field for a long time, but without being an authority in that field. You could just say, "Okay, here is the expert." Well, then you then can go to an authority in that field. So just because you're an expert doesn't make you an authority. Anyway, that is part of my argument with them. Anyway, the other thing that they were really upset about today is that they wanted to talk about how if you help an immigrant coming to this country, like past immigrants helped other immigrants, they couldn't understand why I wouldn't let someone live with me. Common theme with them, people living with me. So they said that they uh, use my address, and I'm going to use as a thumbnail. I did a search on myself, and the elementary schoolmate's mother's name came up with her first name and my last name. What the hell is this? And they said, well, they thought that was similar to, I told you, like when we were kids, I would fill out a sweepstake and use their address. They gave me permission, or was something that would benefit them. But that's my point. That's not the same. You don't do that as an adult with your elementary schoolmate's little friend. That's what they like to call me, the little friend, which goes to show I'm not a family friend. If I'm the elementary schoolmate's little friend, meaning you knew me since I was 8 years old, you would not use my last name, my family name. And they use that phrase a lot, family name, so I'm going to use it so that makes sense. So they keep switching this to something that seems like, meaning they keep trying to find a way of saying, well, this happened like this in the past, why can't it happen now? Because in the past, you gave consent for something that benefited you. I never gave consent for something that would benefit you also. That's part of this. Who benefits? And I think that's something I like to look at when I deal with these type of people. Who benefits? So they said they would like to run scenarios past me. We already know the picking my brain thing goes back to this. Yes, you want to run scenarios past me to benefit from it, benefit from my experience. Does that make me an authority? No, but it means you're benefiting from my experience, which goes back to this whole conversation. If you're benefiting from every single thing in your interactions with me, then you must say that. That becomes my experience with you. You then have to say, I'm benefiting from interacting with this person. And then you understand. So they said, well, they thought that would mean that they must have done something for me when I was younger, and I should always help them benefit from being around me or the relationship with me. That's what a predator does. A predator makes you feel like just because they do something in the beginning that's nice, you then must always help that predator. If an 8-year-old benefits from something, a 50-year-old doesn't have to keep repaying that. That's my point. They benefited from the interaction with me when I was 8. That was how this whole situation started. And I'll say it one more time. The grandmother wanted me to hang out with the granddaughter, who would have been 9 at the time, because the granddaughter had some sort of problem, and I was more outgoing. I was able to express myself, more expressive, and it was to benefit them. They keep changing the situation. You can never change how a relationship starts. And I want to tell you folks that they're really angry that I've had relationships that they can't try to, they said the word minimize. Yeah, but you can't change the way a relationship starts. If a relationship starts not as a friendship, but more like, I'm going to kind of take you, they said, under my wing, meaning I'm going to kind of help you get yourself together. That's how I'll always think about you. And that's part of this. And I think it bothers them about that, because they said, oh, that really is how the relationship progressed. That I became the one that always had to try to help them get themselves together. I can't be that, especially not at 8. I couldn't be that after a certain point at about 14. And if that hurts their feelings, they should have thought about it before they put it out there publicly. A 14-year-old is a child. It's not a little child, but it's still a child. So I want to go to why they were trying to make it seem like my YouTube videos that talks about dating and does he like you wasn't for children. Children couldn't understand the premises behind it, and it also talked in adult language. Children were not finding that video. The age range that would normally find those videos that I had up were people who could write a comment that was at a level that was with the video. And I was not interacting with children. And they kept trying to push that. Now I know why, because this is part of a child pedophile ring, child trafficking ring. Meaning that would have been their way of getting to children. For me, I never even thought of it like that. And that's why this channel is 13 and up. This is an adult conversation that needs to be addressed. If a grown-up asks a young child, an 8-year-old, to help out with a 9-year-old, there's a problem. If I become the person who they want around because they said they were using this technology on me, that's also a problem, because we already know what this technology does. It causes mental illness. So if you're using technology to cause me to have mental illness and you're an adult, that's child abuse. You're child abusers, and you can't clean that up. Thank you for watching.